How's it going? It's cold for California standards, but nowhere near Chicago. Like 60s. It's been good. Busy with pasta, busy with truffle kits, which is a good thing. Good holidays. Yeah, so it was pretty much actually my parents both worked in restaurants, so I kind of grew up around that as a kid and got into cooking via my dad, and that's where I really got really interested into cooking and figured I thought about culinary school. I wanted to go to culinary school. It was a bit out of my price range, so I didn't end up going to culinary school. But pretty much just worked all over and worked now. Came out to Napa Valley for my dream job. So been here about 3 years. But um, yeah, just started from my parents. Their love of restaurants translated into me. So they never owned a restaurant. They just worked. They actually met in a restaurant. Um, and worked together in the restaurant. But it was actually Benihana, which is probably a lot of people have heard of or been to. So ironically, yep, famous in his own right. Um, Actually, ironically enough, my first restaurant job was at BJ's Brewery and Restaurant, um, and then after that, it was a good experience. But I kind of had always dreamed about more upscale, more fine dining, and kind of wanted to go that route. So after about 6 months, I found a um, more higher end kitchen, which was what I was after, and kind of just rose up through that kind of avenue and moved around different cities to work in different restaurants. Um, I think always, obviously watching TV. One of the first catalysts for me was Gordon Ramsay on Hell's Kitchen back in the day. So I think seeing that on TV is like, oh, cooking looks, intense and fun, and something that I would want to do. Yeah, if you're at the very top of the food chain and you're making the menu, like I'm not a very good drawer, but I enjoy translating that into food and art. It may not be your standard drawing per se, but food to me is very can be very transformative. The same that art can be. I think for me, and it's the same for how you started as well, is, I always felt that I was never good enough to be in those top end, 3-star, 2-star, 1-star Michelin kitchens. And I've never been to school, so I'm not professionally trained per se. But for me, it was reading a lot of cookbooks. And I remember one of the first cookbooks that really inspired me, that blew my mind, was Thomas Keller, The French Laundry. Because even though techniques at the time, or even now, were still pretty out there, and you look back at it now and it's crazy. But for me, that's what inspired me. And I read through that whole cookbook pretty quick, and then digested it and read it again. And I remember anything that I didn't understand from that cookbook, whether it was, a French word, I would look it up. And, because I like to learn things. And if someone's not going to teach me in school, like I've never been, it's up to me to figure it out. So everything that I didn't understand, I would just write it down, jot it down. And then when I had time, I'd, Google it, or make it so I would understand what they're talking about, and then move on to the next question. That's kind of how I've taught myself. Yeah, right. And I think that's a huge thing, to have that experience. And even if you've never worked in a restaurant like that, you can still use that at home. It's something that you can use every single day, whether you're a home cook or you're French Laundry or a Linea. That doesn't matter. It's all about the basics and the foundation, which is, to me, even cooler, because not everyone, simplicity. It's very easily said multiple times, but it's hard to repeat. I think that's the a huge aspect of that, which I find pretty interesting, is that you can have a really simple dish with two ingredients, and it might be the best carrot or best vegetable that you've ever had, and it's literally carrot and salt, or just something very, very basic, and what people might call simple. But the thought going into that is just almost the reverse. It's almost the opposite. It's like, oh, it's just a carrot and salt, but it's not just a carrot and salt. I think, to me, that when I first started out cooking, I was in that same mind frame. And It was always like, oh, well, I'm gonna put on 1,000 different ingredients because at the point, when I didn't know as much as I know now, I thought, oh, that's what everyone does, and they're putting on all these cool ingredients I've never heard of that no one knows about. And now, fast forward now 5 years later into my career, it's like, no, no, it's opposite now. It's exactly what Daniel Hum said. It's what can I take away? How simple can I make it to be amazing? What steps can I take out? It's literally two ingredients or three ingredients. Like, how do I make it the best three ingredients that you've ever had in your entire life? For me, it was really just kind of emailing, my resume, blind emailing, and not expecting a response, to be honest. And I remember the first job that I moved to LA from Orange County was Patina, which back then they had a star in LA, and they're in the Walt Disney Concert Hall, and that was the first Michelin starred kitchen that would accept me. So I took it and I ran and I moved to LA for it. But a lot of it was just being persistent and you know sending out a response and sending out an email and hoping you get a response. Best case scenario, or going in for a stage or going in for an interview. Never hurts to try, and to try again and again and again. That's really what you gotta do, because I think people look for the culinary school degree, and I don't have that. I've never been to school, but that's never a bad thing. Honestly, that was probably French Laundry. I kept trying multiple year after year after year. I'm like, okay, well, I worked here and maybe that'll help, and then I worked here and maybe that'll help, and then it wasn't until I was actually in Nashville, and I was actually quite happy in Nashville after I was there for 4 years, a little over 4 years, and I was happy. And then one day I checked my email and I thought I was going crazy after a long shift, but it was a message from the French Laundry asking if I wanted to come out for a stage. So that was that was a pretty. Yeah, I mean, that was always Thomas Keller's always been the biggest inspiration ever since I started cooking. So that was my dream restaurant of all time to work at growing up. So yeah, I remember just being really tired from work, but also being super excited about it. Couldn't believe it. I think every stage I've done is I've been terrified, which is a good thing in a you know in a sense. I always, I never thought I was going to be good enough to work that in those caliber restaurants, whether it's Chicago, New York, Napa, Nashville. I always struggle with doubting myself, but you've also got to tell yourself, well, if they're asking you out there, it's for a reason. It's not just to waste their time or your time. It's because they see something in you, and it's for you to show them that you belong in that kitchen, and also for you to see how that kitchen operates. Because not every single time the kitchen and the individual is always going to be a match, which I find very important in staging. Is that's a good way for both parties to see how each other operate. But- right. But I also think when I did my stage, I remember thinking, oh, everything I was doing was wrong. Everything is wrong. But obviously, that's just the nerves. And I think working through the nerves in those environments, it's a high pressure environment, as you know, from Chicago, and being in some of the kitchens out there. Those environments are definitely not for everyone. But if it is what, people want to do, then give it a try. Never hurts in trying. Yeah, I pretty much flew out to Napa, and um, remember I spent probably about 5 days out in Napa, and one of the days I ate at the restaurant Meadowood, I ate at Benu, and I ate at Saison, and those were all three restaurants that at the time were on my bucket list. So I was really excited about that, and also I was like, well, take my time, take advantage of the fact that I'm able to go out to Napa and dine at these places, and also get ready for the stage. And it was mostly, a lot of it was just trying to stay mellow and relax as most as I could, and keep, yeah, because I think for me, I do have anxiety, and sometimes it gets in the way of things. Most of the times I can keep it at bay, but in an environment like that, it's important to kind of check yourself and make sure that your head's right. Make sure that that it's all right to mess up, but everyone messes up. We're human, but try to keep it to the minimum. I remember for me it was a 2 day stage, which I had never had a multiple day stage before that. Even at other 2 3 star restaurants, it was just one day. So I remember it was a bit of a different mindset, especially knowing, okay, it's 2 intense days that very well could decide my future. Um, but yeah, I remember it was 2 days, and I just gave everything I could into the 2 days and crossed my fingers. I was like, well, I hope they ask me back the next day, because there is hope. I I remember after day one, it was such a rush. It's exhilarating and it's nervous, but it's also like, wow, you're for me, it was personally, it was just like, wow, I'm in the dream kitchen I've dreamed of, you know, cooking for 7 years before that. It doesn't get any better than this. So I remember after day one, I was just like, it was a long day and it was exhausting, but it was also, a rush of like, wow, this is actually happening. It's not me turning on the TV, seeing Thomas Keller and dreaming of it. It's like, oh, you're actually here. You've made it this far. So keep pushing and keep your head down. Enjoy the moment. You gotta enjoy the moment. Can't let it just pass you by. Life's too short for that. Uh, I didn't get any kitchen snacks, but I remember the day after my second day, so the end of the stage, the day after that, they had me come in for dinner, and that was a life changing experience. Yeah, it was a very long 5 hour kitchen snack, if you will. Yeah, I don't think there's a better compliment or better word of advice is to get advice from other people, and you know don't take it personal, but take it as advice straight up. Because I think in that environment, in those environments, you're there to get better, and if you take it too personal or you get hurt about it, you're not going to grow as an individual. That's something that I learned very early on and the hard way. Because starting out, I thought I knew everything, which is, I think, a lot of us go through that phase. But it's a very what's the right word? It's kind of, yeah. Well, perspective is a huge thing. I think the basics and the fundamentals is probably the most important, because if you don't have your starting blocks, it's very, very hard to build on that. If you don't have a strong foundation, it's very hard to build on that as well. I suffer from the same thing starting out. I wanted to go straight to the top, and I think it made me a better cook to start at the very bottom, and to start not in those elite kitchens, but to start in a corporate or a small restaurant. And that's really where I learned a lot of the basics that I have is from there. So I think it doesn't require school, or just put your head down and work and be humble. Take every little piece of advice you can from every single person, and obviously take it with a grain of salt. But try to see it from a learning. Everything is a learning opportunity. 100%. Well, it was funny because I remember telling him, like, I'm not from Napa Valley. Like, it's gonna, if I take the job, it's gonna take me, a few months to get my stuff sorted out. I gotta figure out my rent situation in both Nashville and Napa, find a place to live here. Um, and they're really open about it. And I'm sure I wasn't the first person who was like that. So they're probably more open than I was, like, with the running with the I was like a chicken running with its head cut off because there's so much going on. But main thing was figuring out a place to live and um, you know kind of putting my Nashville chapter to an end for this move. Um, but I remember driving out cross country to Napa from Nashville and got settled in. First week was pretty intense learning curve, but I think every new kitchen is a hard learning curve because they all work in their own ways. And yeah, I think I remember every day felt impossible. Every single day was just like, okay, there's 10 things on for dinner service, and then the next day it was 12 things, and the next day is more, and it makes you better because it's a list that I think everyone knows that is unattainable to achieve in that one day, but it makes you 10 times better because you just keep pushing and you push and you push. By the end of by the end of the week, instead of having trouble with 10 things, I was like, okay, I'm having trouble with 20 things, and that's really how you grow. And you know, there's no other way but to push through it and to do it. Just get through it because no one's gonna do it for you. So that was a I remember my first month at French Laundry was it was rough. I was always the slowest one, and everyone goes through that phase, obviously. But I remember after month two, after month three, I'm like, okay, now I'm helping these other people. Now I'm helping this person. Now I'm helping this person. That's like the epitome of like, okay, you're doing good, you're doing all right. It wasn't constantly, oh, other people are taking my prep list and helping me. It was always the opposite of that, and that's obviously a good thing. So I think that's always a big thing is staying hungry, because if to me if you're not staying hungry, you're not persistent, then you're just kind of resting on your laurels and you're kind of laying back. And there's always going to be more potential, or at least there should always be more potential to grow. So Oh yeah. I mean, you said it out of my mouth. I remember in March when I started my pasta business, I had always wanted to sell pasta ever since I learned how to make it in Nashville, and I never knew how. And when March hit and the world went to shit, that was my oh shit moment. My oh fuck. I lost my job and I have bills. Everyone has bills, obviously, but you know, for me, it was just that oh shit moment. Like you lost your job. What are you gonna do? And for me, I've always kind of looked at it as either in a situation, either I can do something about it, or I can stand on the sidelines and cry about it, which will do nothing, or I can do something about it. So for me, I decided to do something about it and figured it out. Let's really no other words around it, but it was always like I never knew how to start it in terms of labeling or the simplest packaging or even a name. I didn't have in mind until that moment, and literally just sat down for 2 days, 3 days straight, and just crunched some numbers. I was like, okay, well, I have this much in my bank account, and this is what I need to start it. So if I'm not going to start it now, then when will I ever start it? Why not give it a try? Worst that happens is it fails. But even if it fails, I still learn from it. So 2 weeks. I think it was definitely a sink or swim moment, as most of the kitchens I worked in is you're either gonna do it or you're not. So I just took that same mentality and was like, well, I've always wanted to start a pasta business. I'm either gonna do it or I'm not. And there was really never a moment where I was like, no, I'm not gonna do it. I'm gonna just kind of sit on the sidelines. Like it was always about go, 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 and here's an opportunity. I saw it as an opportunity, not as yeah, I definitely saw it as an opportunity rather than you kind of have to. I think I I always view it as every day as my first day. It keeps me fresh, and but it also keeps me pushing and be like, okay, well, how can I maximize my time? Obviously, we only have 24 hours in a day, so how can I maximize as much time I can in the day and still have a very, very high quality ingredient and also still pay my bills? I think it's every day is just a every day I'm either putting out fires or in a good way, which is learning. But yeah, just being very critical of it. And I never really ever want to feel like I'm just resting on my laurels. I want to be pushing and be creative and do new things. And obviously, sometimes we do fail, and I do fail. But I take it as learning opportunity. And okay, if I fail, then how do I make it better? How do I not fail next time? How do I both critique myself and hold myself to a high standard, but not completely destroy myself to where I can't ever want to do this ever again. So it's find balance of that. Yep. Moved out in December of 17. Yeah, it was during the 2017 fires actually that I staged in October, that I staged at French Laundry and moved out in December. So 3 years. Uh, I mean, all my family is in Southern California, and I moved out here completely alone. I was just kind of on my own path, and in terms of running, the pasta business, it's definitely been there's been it's, there's been some really tough moments, but also some really great moments. So I think for me, I throw everything into work, for better or for worse. But it's definitely Napa Valley is definitely a niche. There's a niche for certain things here, and it's unlike any other city I've ever worked in, to be honest, with how everything operates and restaurants, everything, the scenery, different scenery. It's a crazy tight knit community. I think I remember when I first started, my packaging was just terrible. I didn't have very good stickers. I didn't have a good label, and I thought it was a good idea. And someone else was like, "Well, that's shit. Why are you doing it?" I'm like, "Well, because I have no other sounding board." So it was pretty ironic. But I remember when day one of my first pasta order, I went to the market and bought a bunch of Ziploc containers as packaging because that's all I could have off the top of my head. Um, which one doesn't to me doesn't look that great, and two is very expensive to do it that way. But I learned from that, and now it's like, okay, well, packaging costs this much. Let's try to get down, obviously, without skimping on quality or looks, but let's try to minimize that loss in this area, or try to minimize the loss in here, or try to make it up in a different area. But yeah, packaging was a lot of trial and error, and a lot of money spent into it. But I think it's very worth it for that area. Yep. Just do it for them. Yeah. I remember a lot of my, and actually to this day, most of it is all from Instagram. Now I've been able to have a website, which I just launched about 2 weeks ago, but has my whole menu up there and how to order in my Instagram bio. So, but yeah, it's a lot of, every day there's never, when you're working for yourself, there's never an off day. And I love it and hate it, but love it for the most part. But yeah, I think it's just being creative and being engaging and really pushing. And if it's a new menu item, then setting a day aside to just test it over and over and do R&D until I'm happy with it. So right now I have two sauces. One is vegetarian, actually vegan, tomato sauce, and I also have bolognese sauce. Homemade meatballs. Everything is obviously made from scratch. And then pasta, I have lasagna sheets. And then I also have hand cut pappardelle and squid ink fettuccine. So a lot of it, yeah, a lot of it is pretty good. It's all fresh, and it's pretty much per serve. So per serve is as in per person. Um, Try to make it as simple as possible. This is so it's fresh uncooked pasta, so it needs to be cooked, but it's a quick 10-second boil. Yeah, I think it is tough because I think with how small Napa Valley is, for better or for worse, I think word gets around. In my case, it's helped a lot. But I also do believe very highly in the quality of the product. I sometimes have struggled in the past with like releasing things that I wasn't happy with, and if I'm unhappy with it, I just simply won't release it or I won't sell it because that's not how you get very good quality ingredients is if you're unhappy with it. So for me, I think a big part of it is quality, and also the first impression is huge. That's something that I've learned along the way is the first impression, and anyone can hide behind a website or a menu, but when you have that first bite of whatever it is, it's speaks for itself. Um, so the eggs that I use is Tiramisu Ranch farm eggs, and it's the same purveyor as the French Laundry. That's actually how I heard about them. So when I started this pasta business, I saw the quality in them, and I was like, well, there's no going back. I'm not going to use a less quality product for it. I like these eggs. I'm happy with them. They're beautiful. What's not to like about it? Why would you use anything else? So that's how I found my eggs. Everything's pretty much readily available, which is I'm very fortunate for that because sometimes if I have to make something last minute, instead of having to order it or spend an hour on the phone and try to source it, I literally can just either go online or directly text or call a person. It's Napa's that small, so but yeah, it's I'm fortunate to be like that because sometimes if I get something last minute, I can still make it work. Whereas if it was a normal restaurant, in that case, it probably wouldn't be doable. I think for me, which is also on my menu, my two um, different pastas next to lasagna is this the squid ink fettuccine and the hand cut pappardelle. The pappardelle is I like it because it's so simple, and when it's done really well, it's just like it's a fantastic bite, fantastic dish. I think anyone can make pappardelle and anyone can make cacio e pepe, but to do it really, really well and execute it very well is a lot harder than what people think. It's gonna make it or break it. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. So start off with the first question. I think, you know, I'll see pot belly truffles. That's probably the best pairing. And with the squid ink, it's probably cheese, cheese, plugar butter, and pasta and truffles and pasta water. Just a touch of salt. I I like grana is also pretty good as well. I find grana can be just a slight too salty for my taste, but it's a fantastic setting. But I think either Parmesan Reggiano or Grana Padano are probably my go-to every single time. For that you don't need much. I make it in a pan. Too is that people just think, oh, it's just four ingredients. But I think the touch and the finesse of that and the experience of the individual, I think that really shows through in it because four ingredients and do four different things or even 100 different things with it. So I think for me, it's I like to boil and then in a pan next to it so that it's less trouble getting moving around, less moving around. I already have the pan, I have the butter slightly melted, and then black pepper to toast it as the pasta's cooking because I don't want it to be burnt, but I like to be bloomed a little bit. And then put the pasta in, give it a shake, emulsify it. Yeah, the aromatics. Emulsify the sauce and add butter and water and cheese as needed. I think that's the hardest thing is it's easy to break it or to not melt it or to not make it. Um, you yeah. It's I think it's a combination of both very expensive and then also because of COVID, it's at a not quite as expensive as it normally would. With New Year's, it's the most expensive. I think for these New Year's Eve for tomorrow, I think this is going to be the last time I'll be running truffles for the Perigord season because of the price, but also the quality. Like I said, if I'm not happy with quality, then I just simply will not use it. Black truffle. For me, it's around for the truffle kits selling for tomorrow. They're about 160, and they feed four, so it's about 2 ounces, no less than 2 ounces of truffles, and then cheese as well, and also four serves of pasta. Yeah, but I think uh, I think a lot of people don't have experience with truffle. Not as many people have that much experience with truffle. So I think if they're gonna get a truffle kit, then what better introduction to truffles than a lot of truffles? Yeah. I think probably one of the biggest things for me is to start off. I love seafood as well, and I think one very influential person to me that I started doing collaborations with is a lady on Instagram called C Stephanie Fish, and what she does is she forages for uni and spiny lobster and other things in Santa Barbara, and she delivers it to pretty much all the restaurants. Um, she's been doing it for about 20 years, but with COVID, she's also been obviously with no restaurants being open, she's also been affected. So we've essentially collaborated twice now, and she used to deliver to all the restaurants all over pretty much California, so San Diego, LA, Orange County, Napa Valley, San Francisco. And with COVID, she's pivoted just like I've done. It's been a pandemic pivot, is what I call it. But it's like, well, the bills are still due, and yeah, down the road. But it's a hard thing to do. Is when the bills are still due, it's like you got to be creative and you have to pivot in order to make it. Otherwise, you're not going to make it. So it's all about being adaptable every single day. And there's always going to be fires that have to be put out, but it's really how you handle it, how you deal with it, and what you're going to do about it. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, that'd be a blast. I'll have to do that. Thanks for having me on as well. Thank you.